The movie begins with a young man named William gazing out of a ship's window as it sails across the sea. Soon after, we're introduced to Professor Julian delivering a lecture on the evolution of Neanderthals. He explains that when fossils of human-like creatures were first discovered, people believed they could judge one's intelligence and level of civilization based solely on their appearance. Neanderthals in particular were often dismissed as dumb and uncivilized cavemen. Julian goes on to explain that the only non-fossilized Neanderthal remains are preserved on their campus. These remains were initially discovered by his superior, Dr. Goodwin Thomas, who named them William. At that moment, Barbara Sullivan, a medical doctor specializing in reproductive endocrinology, enters the classroom and observes the lecture from the sidelines. Meanwhile, Julian mentions that there is still much to uncover about the true potential of Neanderthals, despite the significant discoveries made through William's fossilized remains. He then suggests a radical idea of utilizing its DNA to clone a living Neanderthal in order to gain further insights. Later that evening, Barbara finds Julian sitting alone at a restaurant and decides to join him. She brings up the idea of potentially cloning a Neanderthal and confidently claims that she knows how to do it. She goes on to explain the entire process, which is revealed to be possible but challenging and costly. When Barbara asks why Julian is interested in Neanderthals, he brings her to his lab. Inside, he shows her a variety of ancient specimens, focusing particularly on ancient stone tools made by both humans and Neanderthals. Over the next few years, Barbara and Julian fall in love and become the most influential couple among the university professors. They also start the project to clone a Neanderthal with the university's approval. Unfortunately, this sparks a big discussion about whether it's ethically right to use DNA to bring back an extinct species. The university faculty is divided, with some thinking it's a crazy idea to clone Neanderthals, while others see potential for valuable insights from the project. Ultimately, the university president, Bob Claiborne, consults with Dr. Thomas and decides to stop the cloning project altogether. Having dedicated years to extensive research, Barbara and Julian refuse to give up on their project. They decide to continue despite the odds, with Barbara even volunteering to carry the fetus herself. The couple then gets married in Nevada, where Barbara gives birth to a healthy baby Neanderthal named William. The nurses are surprised by the newborn's unique facial features. Julian then heads to the university to inform Bob about their success and announces a news conference. However, Bob is furious since Barbara and Julian used university funds to continue the project, which had been shut down. In a meeting with his colleagues, Bob considers firing and possibly suing Barbara and Julian. However, the colleagues point out that the university could also be held responsible for allowing the project to continue if legal action is taken. After some discussion, they decide to embrace the potential fame that could come with the Neanderthal project, knowing it will attract worldwide attention. A week later, a press conference is held at the university where Julian shares photos of the first Neanderthal baby. He suggests that William might have a stronger immune system compared to human babies. Julian also emphasizes that the Neanderthal baby is not biologically related to him or Barbara. Following this, we find William back at the ship, now 18 years old. He then gets off and drives to a secluded house in the forest with his mother, Barbara. She comforts her son, assuring him that he's always welcome back home. Once Barbara leaves, William heads inside the house, where he discovers an ancient Neanderthal stone tool among various photos and artifacts on display. Moments later, a woman named Sarah arrives and introduces herself as Julian's girlfriend. During dinner, she compliments William for his healthy appetite, leading Julian to explain that his body requires 20% more calories due to his unique metabolism. After dinner, Julian talks to his son and reminds him how proud he is to see his efforts to learn. The following day, Sarah tries to help William with the basics of English, but it turns out that he struggles to understand metaphors and other abstract ideas. Back at the university, Julian shares with his class the strong reactions people had to the idea of a Neanderthal baby. Many had expected William to be dangerous, but when he didn't turn out that way, some were even disappointed. He goes on to explain that humans believe we drove Neanderthals to extinction because of our superior intelligence. However, through regular study of William, they've found that Neanderthal babies display intelligence equal to or even greater than human babies. Julian then notes that William's immune system is also remarkably strong and adaptable to different environments. He reveals that these findings will not only benefit the medical field, but also provide valuable insights into the human body and brain. In a flashback, it's revealed that Barbara and Julian had a disagreement about their son, which ultimately led to their divorce. Julian insists on continuing to study William in the lab, while Barbara believes their son deserves better than being treated as an experimental subject. Reflecting on their past, he reminds Barbara of her brilliance as his science partner. However, she expresses that in this situation, she sees herself more as a mother to William than a science partner to Julian. In the aftermath, Barbara gains custody of William and brings him to live with her. On William's first day of school, Julian visits him to observe how he interacts with other children in his new environment. As time goes on, Julian makes frequent visits to check on William and monitor his progress in school. A couple of years later, we find William riding his bike in the woods when he encounters a group of teenagers around his age. They mock him, calling him a caveman, and start chasing him on their bikes when he tries to escape. The bullies eventually catch up to William and try to attack him, but his exceptional strength allows him to defeat them. Subsequently, the parents of the bullies try to bring the matter to the police, but they fail to make a case. Later on, Barbara cautions her son against giving in to anger and violence. She also advises him to walk away from such situations in the future. That night, William turns to his laptop to learn more about Neanderthals online. He then comes across various articles depicting Neanderthals as primitive and uncivilized beings. A few days later, Julian pays a visit to William and they are spotted playing catch together. Barbara then calls them in for dinner, where we are briefly introduced to her new boyfriend, Ted. This encounter unexpectedly stirs mixed emotions in Julian, causing him to gradually grow more distant from his son while he struggles with his emotions. During one of William's routine tests, Julian fails to show up and sends a graduate student from his lab to conduct the tests instead. This angers Barbara, who promptly calls him to criticize him for not being present for his own son and for sending a stranger in his place. As time flies, William finds himself in high school. While taking a test, he accidentally snaps his pencil with his unusually strong grip as a Neanderthal. Afterward, Judy, a girl from his class, approaches him and asks if he could come over and help her to practice for an upcoming play. Just as William's about to agree, his friends remind him of their planned camping trip, so he agrees to help Judy with her lines after they return from their trip. On the camping trip, William and his buddies come across two hippies who decide to join them by the fire. In the midst of conversation, one of his friends accidentally reveals that William is a Neanderthal. The man then recognizes him as the young man from the university. Intrigued, the woman questions William if he ever wishes to go back to his own time, to which he unexpectedly admits that he does. Upon returning to school, William helps Judy in rehearsing her lines for the play that evening. As the play comes to an end, they share a kiss on stage as part of the performance. But when William attempts to continue the kiss, Judy quickly rejects him once the curtain falls. Later on, Barbara and Julian meet with one of his high school professors to discuss their son's academic progress. The professor explains that while William is highly intelligent, he still struggles with standardized tests. He then suggests that William might benefit from intensive tutoring if he plans to reapply to the university in the future. It's at this moment that Julian learns that Barbara withdrew their son's college application without informing either of them. What follows is a heated argument between the two regarding their son's future. Julian wants William to move in with him and explore more of the world, while Barbara insists on him taking a part-time job on the island after graduation. As tensions rise, the professor interrupts and emphasizes that the priority should be what's best for their child. He also reminds them that William's future is not theirs to decide, and the decision must be up to William when he turns 18. The next day, William walks along the beach with his friends, discussing their college plans and acceptances. At this moment, he becomes aware that his own future is still uncertain. Later that evening, William sits with his parents to talk about what lies ahead. Julian suggests that he go back to the lab, but Barbara opposes the idea. She then cautions William that his father intends to exploit him as a test subject for his research and experiments. Nevertheless, Julian tries to convince his son that his remarkably strong immune system could be valuable for various medical research purposes. He also argues that it could lead to the discovery of new treatments that could benefit millions of people. In the end, William decides to pursue university education, but makes it clear that he'll only go through with it if he can earn his place there as a student. Julian is delighted to hear this and offers his support in preparing for the entrance exams. Returning to the present, Julian is disheartened to see little improvement in William's test scores. Frustrated, he directs his anger towards Sarah and blames her for not adequately teaching his son. In a fit of rage, Julian throws away the paper before abruptly leaving the house without a word. William finds himself overwhelmed with emotion, unable to do anything but cry. Sarah tries to console him by assuring him that his scores are actually decent. She then suggests they take a walk in the woods together to clear their heads. During their walk, Sarah explains that Julian's outburst was likely caused by the stress he's facing at work. She then opens up about her own upbringing, recounting how her parents used to punish her for anything less than an A. They even pressured her to take numerous extra classes and had mapped out her entire life for her. This led Sarah to resent them, but with time, she came to understand that her parents were only trying to help her. They were trying to do what they believed was best for Sarah, much like Julian's intentions towards William. Out of the blue, William and Sarah share a romantic moment with a kiss, which Sarah reciprocates warmly. Back at home, Julian questions their absence and his son's lack of focus on studying. Feeling uneasy, William heads to his room, where he eventually falls asleep while holding on to the ancestral stone. The following morning, Sarah drives William to his university application test. However, during the test, he once again breaks his pencil because of his unusual strength. William then leaves the classroom and wanders around town, drawing stares due to his appearance. Eventually, he seeks guidance from Dr. Thomas at the university. She shows him the perfectly preserved remains of the Neanderthal from which he was cloned. Observing closely, William feels as though the preserved Neanderthal doesn't fit in the enclosure, much like himself in the modern world. Elsewhere, Sarah reaches out to Barbara, worried about William's absence after the exam. In the meantime, William sneaks into one of Julian's lectures, during which he's labeled as a Neanderthal. He immediately interrupts and confronts his father's derogatory remarks, including being called unintelligent, primitive, and a caveman. Julian then tries to silence William, claiming it's not the right time or place for an argument. He then responds bluntly, calling Julian and his work failures. In response, Julian snaps back that William is the one who's a failure, but instantly regrets his words. After their discussion, Julian follows his son outside to make amends, but he refuses. Instead, William asserts that Julian isn't his real father, leading Julian to slap him in frustration. He then drops the Neanderthal stone he's been holding onto, and as Julian reaches for it, he lashes out and ends up attacking his father with the very stone. Overwhelmed, he runs away while Sarah and Barbara, along with the patrolling police, search for him. As William exits the university, both Sarah and the police spot him. Despite her attempts to reach him, the police prevent her and disregard her pleas. Shortly after, the police surround William's lifeless body, likely having shot him for not complying with their orders. The movie wraps up with Sarah visiting the excavation site of the Neanderthal while holding a small child, most likely William's.